Somewhere in a garage in Ohio, a 1972 refrigerator is still running. Not as a novelty, but as the family's primary fridge. It has never been replaced, and when something went wrong with it over the decades, the owner opened the back panel, bought a $5 part, and fixed it himself on a Saturday afternoon. Now walk into a big box store today. Spend $3,000 on a LG French door refrigerator with a glass panel, a touchscreen, and built-in Wi-Fi. It looks like it belongs in a spaceship, and statistically it will be dead before your next presidential election. When it dies, the repair technician will not fix it. He will hand you a quote for $1,800, look you in the eye, and tell you it's not worth repairing. Then he will suggest you buy a new one. This is not bad luck. This is not manufacturing variance. This is the outcome of a deliberate engineering and legal strategy built by some of the world's largest appliance companies. In this investigation, we are going to expose the defect at the center of the biggest appliance scandal in American history. The legal trick companies use to make sure you can never sue them over it, and the country that has already made all of this a criminal offense. The story begins with a component most people never think about: the compressor. Every refrigerator on Earth uses a compressor to create cold air. Think of it as the heart of the machine. For most of the 20th century, every fridge used a rotary compressor. A motor spun a shaft inside a bath of oil. It was loud. It was heavy. It used slightly more electricity. But it was almost impossible to kill because the spinning action constantly splashed oil across every moving surface. Lubrication was automatic and continuous. Machines built on that design lasted 30 to 50 years. In the early 2000s, LG made a decision that would destroy millions of appliances. To meet tightening energy regulations they were publicly celebrating, LG introduced the linear compressor. Instead of spinning, this compressor drove a piston back and forth in a straight line, like a syringe. On paper, it was brilliant, quieter, more efficient. LG advertised a 20-year lifespan. They put that promise in their marketing and eventually on their warranty. But the physics never cooperated. Because the piston moves in a line and does not spin, it cannot splash oil around the chamber. It depends on a delicate system of tiny valves and springs to manage lubrication. Those valves wear out. When they fail, metal grinds on metal inside a sealed unit. Shavings enter the cooling lines. The entire refrigerant system becomes contaminated. You cannot simply replace the compressor because the circulatory system of the machine is full of metal debris. The fridge is totaled, and in many cases, this happens in year 3 or 4 of ownership. Now here is where the story gets darker. This was not a surprise to LG. In lawsuits filed across the United States, plaintiffs allege that LG knew the failure rate of these compressors was, in the words of one lawsuit filing, unreasonably high. The company had already settled at least 3 class action lawsuits by the time new cases were filed in 2024 and 2025. In each settlement, LG's agreement stated explicitly that the company denied any defect in its refrigerators. They paid out, they changed nothing. And then they kept selling the same compressor. One woman in the NBC investigation bought an LG fridge. It died. LG honored its warranty and gave her a reimbursement check. She used that check to buy another LG fridge. That one died too. One man's LG refrigerator has required 5 compressor replacements. 5. Each replacement covered under the warranty, each replacement failing again within months. In one case, a family lived out of coolers for weeks while LG's customer service kept them on hold, promising checks that never arrived. The scale of this is staggering. when a local television reporter in California ran one story about the linear compressor failure, the lead attorney in the case received thousands of calls within 2 weeks. Thousands. Not complaints. Calls from people who had already lost food, already paid for repairs, already replaced machines they should not have had to replace. The attorney described it as a nationwide issue. One lawsuit called it a pandemic of compressor failures. But LG had prepared for exactly this moment. And what they did next is perhaps more brazen than the defect itself. When you buy an LG refrigerator and bring the box home, before you open it, before you plug it in, before you ever use it, LG has already stripped away your right to sue them. Printed on the outside of the cardboard box is an arbitration agreement. By opening the box, the company argues you have agreed to resolve any dispute in private arbitration rather than in a court of law. No jury, no class action, no public record. A law professor at Santa Clara University who reviewed the practice was direct about the implications. Proper notice, she noted, requires that both parties knowingly agree to the terms. Agreeing to something printed on a box you cannot read until after you've handed over $3,000 raises serious questions about whether that consent is meaningful. LG has used this argument to fight cases in court, attempting to force grievances into private arbitration rather than face a jury. This is the complete picture. Sell a machine with a known defect. Settle lawsuits quietly while denying any wrongdoing. Continue selling the same product and bury the arbitration agreement on the box so consumers lose their most powerful legal tool before they even plug the fridge in. And here is the detail that should make every American citizen uncomfortable. France made this illegal in 2015. The French National Assembly passed legislation establishing fines of up to 300,000 euros and jail sentences of up to 2 years for manufacturers who deliberately plan the failure of their products. It was the first law in the world to formally recognize planned obsolescence as a crime. The European Union followed, mandating in 2019 that appliance manufacturers must supply spare parts to professional repair technicians for 10 years after a model's release. In the United States, there is no equivalent federal law. Several states have passed right to repair legislation, but at the federal level, you remain entirely on your own. So what do you actually do? The answer is not complicated, but it requires rejecting the marketing entirely. When you buy a refrigerator, find the dumbest, simplest model on the floor. No Wi-Fi, no touchscreen, no ice maker in the door, no linear compressor. Look for a bottom freezer or top freezer model with a conventional rotary compressor. The fewer systems it has, the fewer systems can fail. If you already own a problematic LG or Kenmore French door refrigerator with a linear compressor, search your model number and the phrase class action settlement. You may have already qualified for compensation under a previous settlement and not known it. And if you have an old appliance that still works, a dryer from 1995, a fridge from 2002, do not replace it out of aesthetic embarrassment. That machine was built in an era when a manufacturer's reputation was staked on durability, not software features. It is almost certainly more reliable than anything you can buy today. The refrigerator in your kitchen is supposed to be the most boring appliance you own. It should run for 20 years without drama. What we have instead is a $3,000 computer that keeps your milk cold, and like a computer, the companies selling it expect you to upgrade every 5 years. The French government understood that this arrangement is a crime. It is time for American consumers to understand it too. If you want to know which other household products have been quietly redesigned to fail, hit subscribe and watch this video next.